So this is my kind of introductory poster design basics thing. In this session, I will be going over both the process for submitting a poster, creating a poster and submitting it for printing through our program. I will also go a little bit into just some very basic design kind of tips and things that people working on a poster may want to keep in mind. Um, some of this is more or less relevant depending on whether you already have a set template for the poster that has been provided by the conference or the event. Um, but we will cover all of it regardless, basically. So, again, our objectives, just to get a good overview of how our specific poster printing service works, but also then to provide some general poster printing tips. So, I'm going to begin with some of the highlights of our policy, kind of specifically focusing on some of the things that trip people up when they request posters. Because this is a free service, we do have some stipulations for kind of to whom we can provide it and what types of things. This is a service that is only available for faculty, residents, and fellows, staff, and students. People do have to be a kind of direct LSU HSC affiliate. We also require that all posters printed by the library include an LSU HSC New Orleans logo. And then this is only for the printing of academic research posters. We don't print things like, if a student group on campus was having an event, we wouldn't necessarily print a poster for that. Sometimes we will make exceptions, in which case I have to have them approved by the library administration. But generally speaking, we are talking about poster presentations of research, typically the sorts of things that one would see at a poster session at a conference or a research symposium. All posters submitted for printing must be submitted in a PDF format, and we are not able to do any sizing or editing of submitted posters. So basically, when people send us a poster, it needs to be a PDF format so that we can't, because A, that is what our poster printing software uses, but also that prevents us from accidentally clicking on a text box and moving something in PowerPoint. We don't want to be in a position where we could do an error that would mess up your poster. So basically, it needs to be completed, finished, set in a PDF format. It needs to be sized at the size you want the poster to be and ready for printing. To kind of confirm that everything is correct and ready to go, we do have a proof approval process. So when a poster is submitted to us, the first thing we will do is we'll kind of give it a quick look-see to make sure that we at least have, the required inclusions, mostly that LSU HSC logo, and that the size of the poster that has been requested on the request form matches the size that the slide actually is. The most common problem we see is it being an 8.5 by 11, as opposed to a 48 by 36. But basically, once we've kind of hit at least the highlights of things we can catch immediately, we print an 11 by 17-inch full color proof, and we hold that for you at the library desk. We ask that people requesting a poster come to the library in person to look at that printout and approve it. We find that in addition to making sure that you've sent, the correct version of the file, we find that people catch a lot of errors at this stage, many more than you would expect. People will find typos in headings, misspellings in author names, all kinds of things. And then basically the last point on our highlights of the policy is please allow adequate time. We request a minimum of 3 business days from request to pickup time. We really request allowing more, especially for high volume things like this, like the medical school research symposium that's coming up at the end of October. We request, like give us at least a week at a bare minimum. I believe we've actually suggested that people submit their posters by this coming Monday, which is the whatever this coming Monday is, the 13th or something, in order to have it printed by the 30th. That's because specifically the medical school research symposium is kind of honestly our largest group of posters for a single event in the whole year. We end up printing well over 100 posters for that event. So just allowing plenty of time really lowers the stress level for everyone involved, especially if you do have to kind of, find a time to come to the library to approve that proof. Sometimes just getting that done can be kind of the tricky part. We do highly recommend not just to submit your poster early, but also to get that proof approval process started early, because if people do find things that need to be edited, need to do revisions and come back and look at the revisions, all that adds time to the process. And it it doesn't do us a lot of good to have a poster submitted 2 weeks in advance if we don't get the proof approved till the day before the poster's needed. Um, but that's kind of basically the highlights and some of the reasoning behind them. There are many sources out there for free templates. Canva is pretty popular. I don't necessarily recommend using it because a lot of the functionality is limited to the premium paid version, specifically a lot of the resizing things. So if you don't get your poster sized right from the beginning, then resizing it is behind the paywall. There are also several poster printing services that actually offer free templates. I've listed a couple here. We've got posterpresentations.com and posternerd.com. I haven't added this to the slide yet, but also Adobe Express is getting it more popular for poster design. Also, a lot of schools and departments have created templates for their students to use. So if you are presenting for a specific event, I don't know if there's a specific template for the medical school research day, but I do know there is a specific size requirement, which is, I believe, 42 by 42 inches. There may be a template for it that Dr. Sian has already, shared info about. If there is one, especially for a specific event, I would recommend using the created template. Also, just fun fact, I am also working with the new communications person, and we are going to be working together to create some custom templates of various sizes for use for our students, so that maybe there will also be more kind of consistent things provided by LSU just to make everyone's lives easier. Okay, this is the part of the presentation where I will talk a little bit about some basic design tips and standards. And basically, adhering to some of these will help you make sure that your poster is both appealing visually, but also accessible. Some general rules of thumb is you kind of want to choose clarity over aesthetics. You don't want to choose something that's beautiful but illegible. You want to kind of eliminate as much clutter as possible. Bear in mind that at most poster symposiums and most poster sessions, there are a lot of posters in a large room. People are not necessarily spending a large amount of time with each poster. So the clearer it can be to look at, the more information someone can get from a quick glance, the better. You kind of want to sort of minimize the text as much as possible, use a lot of graphics. You don't want to crowd things so that it's hard to follow the flow. Blank space is not the enemy. Having some breathing room between your elements can help make things easier and calmer to read. You also want to choose your text wisely. You don't need to reproduce the entire text of your whole research paper on a poster. That's not what a poster is for. It's a summary. And you want to use high contrast colors. That is for accessibility purposes. It's going to make it much easier to read from a distance. If someone has, an element of color blindness or another visual impairment, higher contrast is going to make it more accessible and more legible. Again, as I said in the previous slide, clarity wins. You don't want to use Edwardian script on your poster for obvious reasons, but also similarly, if you're choosing between two things, you always want to choose legibility. You also probably don't want to use Comic Sans. It is very legible. I think that I actually read something about it maybe actually being somewhat better for people who have some issues processing text, but it does have a reputation for being unprofessional. So you probably want to go with your standard sans serif, an Arial, or a Calibri or whatever, something like that. You want boring and legible, and that's completely fine. You do also, I have two examples here. One that is very, very text heavy and very, very small, very cramped. I'm sure this is a wonderful bit of research, but it does have a lot of little kind of design flaws that make it a lot less engaging and easy to read. I would say it is probably worth kind of considering the general mood of whatever conference or whatever presentation. Um, you may not want to be the only poster that is doing like we'll talk about the better poster kind of design model in a couple of slides, but you don't necessarily want to be the only one going rogue and doing something completely different if it is a conference where the standard is very information heavy, very high science. Then it may be more acceptable to have a poster like the one on the left, because maybe there is a priority for presenting a lot of things at once. But generally speaking, though, you want to use graphics to make your information legible. You want to make it engaging. You want to kind of put the most relevant summary kind of somewhere kind of front and center. You can also use things like QR codes to provide like your list of references or to provide, greater details about your methodology or something, so that you can kind of save some space on your poster, but still make that information easy to reach for someone who is interested in going deeper. They can pull it up on their phone, and talk to you in greater depth if they want. So there are some ways you can go about kind of maximizing the space on your actual physical poster. Um, to talk a little bit about color theory, I am going to go a little bit into this, maybe more in depth than is necessary if you are doing a presentation where you already have a template that is set, but just to talk a little bit about it. There are a lot of words that one can use to describe attributes of a color. Hue is the color itself. Value is its relative lightness or darkness. Saturation is the purity or vividness of the color. There are many combinations that are known to be harmonious and appealing. Complementary colors are the ones that are positioned opposite each other on the color wheel. We're fortunate here at LSU. Blue and purple are complementary colors. Generally speaking, combining complementary colors is going to be visually appealing and harmonious. The thing that I do often caution about with complementary colors, though, is that the combination of two complementary colors basically is how you make brown. So orange plus blue makes brown, red plus green makes brown, purple plus yellow makes brown. This is something to consider if you want to use like a color gradient. I don't necessarily recommend doing a purple to yellow gradient because the middle part of that gradient is going to be sort of an unappealing beige. Um, but you could also do analogous colors as a combination. Those are going to be colors that are adjacent on the color wheel. So like reds and oranges, blues and greens. Monochromatic colors are based around shades and tints of a single color. So if you have a poster that is, dark blue, dark and light blues, things like that, those are going to be kind of appealing. There's a lot more tips that we could share about color theory. We could talk about, there are whole courses one could take on color theory, but I'd have provided a link to a little bit more about color theory sort of for design. But to return to the topic of contrast, you may say, I'm going to use two complementary colors to create contrast. That doesn't always work because those other aspects of a color do matter, like the value and the saturation. Um, so I've given two examples here, one of a red and green color combination where they have almost identical value and saturation, and then one where the value and saturation have changed somewhat. And you can see that in that first one, that red and that kind of magenta and that bright green, that really does become hard to read. Like you'd look at those two colors and think that they don't have much in common. That doesn't mean they are high contrast. If anything, it's very difficult to read. The colors almost kind of vibrate against each other. And then you can look below where I've taken those are the same two basic colors in terms of hue, but I've changed the value of both. I've made that pink much lighter and that green much darker. You can see that this is much easier to read. It's much easier to look at. It's much clearer. I could even have pushed that farther, and for readability, I probably should. I should probably make that green, kind of approaching black and that pink almost approaching white. There is actually there are several tools out there that you can use to actually check your color contrast, and I've included the link to one here. Basically, you take the hex code or Pantone number or whatever of the color you're using, put it in there, and it will tell you whether it's adequate contrast kind of for accessibility purposes. The thing I do run into the most often at LSU is someone will sometimes have a white background with yellow text or a yellow background with white text. That's not a great idea from the perspective of readability. That is not enough contrast. You probably want to do a dark purple if you want to do, a yellow background or just black. There's nothing wrong with good old-fashioned black and white. Um, the better poster model, this is something that we are seeing more of on occasion. Again, I do think you want to look at the specific requirements of whatever you are presenting at before launching into doing a better poster model. But if it is something where you have a lot of creative leeway, this may be something you want to consider. And basically, this is, kind of a model introduced by a researcher named Mike Morrison. But the idea is to really kind of take into account how much time people are spending with a poster and make sure that they walk away with as much that they're able to take in a lot of information kind of very quickly that engages them more with the poster so that you're memorable basically, so that they have a good idea of your research. They don't have to stand there and stare at a lot of fine print to find out what you're talking about. So the idea is that you put the most kind of the information that you want the main takeaway to be from your poster right there in the center, right up front, make it big, use a supporting graphic, put kind of your figures on, one of the sidebars, put the abstract on the other sidebar, have a QR code to the rest of the poster. And then that way people are able to look at it immediately and know what your poster is about, know why they might want to know more. It just makes it more engaging. Again, you probably want to do a vibe check of whatever poster presentation you're participating in to see whether something like this would be acceptable. You probably don't want to be the only better poster in a bunch of very traditional, very text heavy ones. Um, okay, our next topic is going to be more of the nuts and bolts about how to adjust a slide size in PowerPoint. I am going to actually open, well, what I'm actually going to do is just kind of get out of my slideshow view and just show you in PowerPoint. So let me go back. Okay. Hopefully my screen share has worked correctly and you are now seeing my general PowerPoint window. But as you can see in the instructions on this slide, to change the size and dimensions of a design, we're going to go to our Design tab at the top here and select Slide Size. And then this one, it does vary a little bit depending on which version of PowerPoint you're using. I think these instructions are maybe either for PowerPoint on a Mac or possibly for PowerPoint in OneDrive. The options will be slightly different, but in this one, it's custom slide size. It might say like page setup, something like that. But choose that. And then you'll see here, my default here is it's been set to widescreen. So my width and height, this is basically roughly legal size paper, and it's sized for printing. So if I wanted to make this, we'll say a 48 by 36, that's pretty close. That's a fairly standard poster size. I can type that in and say, okay. It is going to ask, it's going to give me a couple of options, whether I want to maximize my size or I want to ensure fit. If I say maximize, what it's going to do is kind of stretch my design elements to be as big as they can be and fit on that slide. When you do this, you may have some things that are too large and hanging over the edge of the slide. If I choose ensure fit, it's going to kind of scale things down to fit on the new slide size. Basically, if you are changing slide size and you're going from something, if you're enlarging something, but the ratio is staying the same, it doesn't matter. You probably want to choose ensure fit and it'll probably scale up just fine. But if you're changing ratios, if I'm going, like these slides are currently widescreen, I'm going from basically a 16:9 ratio to a 4:3 ratio. So my elements are going to not fit as well as they do. So I'll do ensure fit. And you can see this has shrunk everything down to basically the original size. So I usually tell people, pick one, see how it works. then try the other one and see whether it works better. Basically, choose whichever one. If you are going from one ratio to another, you're almost always going to have some level of manual readjustment that you have to do. In this case, choosing maximize left me with less changes to make, but you're almost always going to need to kind of shuffle things around, maybe move your title, make your images bigger, you know, move a text box. Like in this case, now that we've got more vertical space, maybe we want to put this at the bottom of the screen, things like that. But either way, we're actually not going to change my whole slide presentation, but that's sort of how it works. And as you can see, this is part of why we can't do resizing for our patrons, basically, because resizing a slide often involves more changing than just changing the desired size. It often involves actually moving content and really shifting things around. Um, Unless you are going to simply a larger version of the same ratio, which you can do that math. Um, Really, it saves a lot of work to have the size correct from the start. So if in doubt, reach out to whoever is organizing the conference, double check the requirements for your posters in advance. You don't want to leave yourself with that work at the last minute when you're already stressed and ready to print. You want to have it right from the start. Um, Another thing that we do recommend that people do is that make sure you read the format, instructions from the conference or whatever it is in detail, because we'll often have people who are confused who will come in and say, I've been told my poster needs to be 4 by 8 feet. And we're kind of like, well, that's too large for our service. Our maximum size is 59 inches. PowerPoint actually has a max of 56 inches. Um, Generally speaking, if they say that, that means that the conference is providing a 4 foot by 8 foot board to mount the poster on. And so that's the maximum size. It doesn't generally mean I haven't encountered any conferences that expect you to produce an 8 foot wide poster. Generally, they're expecting more like a 3 by 4 situation. So check, for the difference between maximum size and, desire, required size. We've had a lot of people get very stressed about that, and you know, some close reading often solves it. Um, okay, this is a bit of information about using a template. Let me go back to slideshow mode, I guess. Yeah. And no. Come on, display settings. So okay. Hopefully you're back in my slideshow. Um, if you have, if you are using a template, um, again, you will want to basically choose the template you want, download it, and open it in PowerPoint. Hopefully, it's going to make life easier if you choose a template that's already sized for the size of poster you want to create. But again, if you do need to resize it, follow the steps in the previous one. As I've said, you may need to manually adjust new elements to fit. And when you are adding images to your poster, bear in mind this is going to be large. So a low quality image is going to become more and more obvious the larger it gets. So generally speaking, you want to avoid screenshots as much as possible. You don't want to hit that print screen and paste in. You want to either create your charts and things in PowerPoint or like export them as images or bring them over from Excel and embed them as charts and graphs and things like that. You don't want to take a screenshot and drop and copy the screenshot into your poster. I've included a couple of examples here with the LSU logo. This is an area where we often see people using a low quality image because a lot of people don't know where to go to find the logo and just go to the website and take a screenshot. Here you can see the difference though between using a high quality image embedded versus a screenshotted image. We do have a bank of high quality LSU logos on the library website. I've included the link here. Also, if you're in doubt about which logo to use, the Auxiliary Enterprises graphics department, there is a whole graphic standards manual about like which logos you're supposed to use on which occasions, when you can use a foundation logo, when you can use the seal, things like that. But generally speaking, one of these LSU Health logos is almost always appropriate. And we do have, as I said, a whole bank of those. And that is something else I'm working with the communications department on getting better information out. And we're hoping that, when we do start maybe producing some official LSU slide poster templates, that will also be able to embed higher quality images that way so that you'll have that already just there, in the poster and not even have to worry about it. Okay, the next step though is to, once you've got your poster perfect and beautiful and everything is like you want it, you will need to export it to PDF. You'll need to convert that slide from a PowerPoint slide to a PDF. So to do this, I'm gonna bounce back out of my slideshow into PowerPoint just to show you the steps, but just to run through it real quickly. Basically, you're gonna go to Save File, and there will either be options. Again, this depends a little bit on which version of PowerPoint you're using. You may see this Save as Adobe PDF. On certain versions, you don't always see that. Sometimes you just see Save As. Either way will do the same thing, and you want to just choose PDF as the file format. The thing you want to be careful of is on certain versions, you'll see an option that says print to PDF. Don't choose that. That will resize your poster to 8.5 by 11 and then export it as a PDF. If you send us that file, we will not be able to print it for you. So just real quick to run through this live. On this one, we have File, we've got Save As, we've got Save as PDF. Either one will work. If we do Save as PDF, it is going to ask to, it's going to prompt us to save it. You can name it whatever you want and hit Save. And I've already got a version of this as a PDF, but we'll say sure. And then if you've got speaker's notes or anything, it will ask. Obviously, you would typically be doing this with like a one-page thing. I usually say no because I don't want those in my PDFs. And doing it this way, it does, it's doing it on my other screen. Let me move this over. It does open this file in PDF, in Adobe for me right away, at least on my computer and with the versions of everything that I'm using. I do often recommend this as a stage at which to double check that your sizing worked correctly. You can do that in your PDF by going to Menu and going to Document Properties and looking at this page size. Mine is not sized to be a poster, but basically when you open your PDF, you should see page size 42 by 42 or whatever your poster is required to be. If it does not say that, don't submit that file. You want to double check that and make sure. This is also a good time to check the quality of any embedded images. If you go to the little magnifying glass and scroll to 100%, it's more obvious on a 48 by 36 poster, but basically you'll see a small chunk on the screen of the life-size version of your poster, and you can kind of look at your images and see if you're seeing any pixelation, see if there are any, problems, any places where maybe you need to insert a higher quality image instead. This all looks pretty good because I haven't really resized it to be larger, but if I did make it larger, it would be pretty noticeable. So that's kind of basically the export process. To return to where's my slide? The one that I'm actually on. Okay, guess I'm on check your work. So I wish it would stop putting my things on the wrong side. As I said, basically, this is a good time to do all of this. Sometimes I do on my own work, I do suddenly notice errors just by exporting to PDF. Just something about, I'm kind of convinced that there's just something that happens in your brain when you do something that feels like publishing it. And so I think that's why people spot things on the printout or why, move even in just moving it over to PowerPoint. Also, looking at the whole picture, zoom out, look at the whole thing, and look at the alignment of like columns and boxes. Sometimes there will be things that will accidentally overlap and will hide important text or data. I've had posters come in where there will just be a random like empty box somewhere blocking something, and sometimes those can be kind of hard to find and diagnose. But But once you've got all that done, you've got your PDF, you're ready to go, you're happy with it. That is when you will want to go ahead and submit your request. We have a link here to the poster printing page, but I will also back out and go in, show you how to get there through the library website. But the way it'll work is this link will take you, well, actually, maybe I can just click it right now, show you right now. Okay, so here is the poster printing page. Again, we've got our policy all laid out. Um, there is a link for the request form for downtown and for the dental library. They have a poster printer out there as well. This is just going to take you to a Microsoft Office. Well, it's going to take you to the steps, but then this will take you to a Microsoft Office form to complete, and there will be a space to upload the poster. This does reiterate things a fair amount, as you can see. We found that there's a need to repeat ourselves. Um, but basically, you just complete the form, upload the PDF document, and send it off. You will receive a confirmation email from the library just letting you know that we've received the form. But you'll want to keep an eye out for a second email that says the proof is actually ready for review. We usually try to get those to you fairly quickly, but if you submit your poster, on an evening or over the weekend, it may be a longer turnaround on that, just depending on kind of who is working and whether it's staff that's trained in the poster printing process. Sometimes on the weekend, it will be someone from another department filling in, so they don't necessarily have access to like the right Teams folder and things like that. But basically, once you get the notice that your proof is ready, come to the library. We'll have it in a folder with a little form. We ask you to review it and approve it, and then sign off on that form, basically kind of acknowledging that you are ready to print and that you understand that we can't do a reprint if you find an error after the fact. We do often recommend bringing your laptop to that with you. That way, if you find something small, you can go ahead and make a change right now and just resubmit while you're there, and we can run off another proof while you wait. I would recommend doing that like during normal Monday through Friday work days, just to make sure that there's staff that's kind of familiar with the process. But we can often, we've had people come in and go run through 5 different versions of their poster while they're there and make small changes each time. We're totally fine with that. We want people to have a product that they're happy with at the end. And then once we have your signature, we will add it to the print queue. Depending on how long the queue is, it may be a very fast turnaround or it might be a little bit longer. It's rarely longer than a day, but again, don't wait till the last minute. We don't want to be in a position where we just physically can't print your poster in time. We want to give you a poster and we want it to be something that you're happy with. So allow adequate time, because if we have 20 posters in our queue, we will just print them in the order that they're approved. And if yours is the last one and we can't get to it in time, then there's not much we can do to help. We will trim the posters to, generally speaking, about a 1/4 inch past whatever the farthest out element is. And then we roll them up, wrap them in rubber bands, and hold them at the desk for you to pick up. So that's kind of what to expect of the process. We will email you. We don't generally turn around and print. If you come in and sign the form, we don't generally turn around and print it while you wait. Generally, we have posters in the queue. If you're going to be hanging around on campus, great, but we don't plan on necessarily approving and picking it up in the same trip. Allow a little bit of time. We will email you when it's ready. And basically, you can come back and pick it up anytime we're open. It's just a matter of, us you giving us your name and us handing over the poster. Basically, proof approval and poster pickup can be anytime during our open hours. You could walk in at 10:45 on a Tuesday night and pick up your poster. We don't mind. But actual printing is kind of limited more to when we have adequate trained staff to do it. So you don't want to, approve a poster at the last minute on Friday night if it's something you need Monday morning. You want to allow some time during the week for us to get it done. And that is pretty much it.